You look over the last 8 years and going into this year, the 9th year of the Matthews, Marner, Nylander era, I have it on my scorecard. I'm curious how you guys see it. As the Columbus series, where they were a clear favorite, the Montreal series, where they were a clear favorite, and before the series started, I would argue that they were a favorite against Florida. Now, it turned out they shouldn't have been, and it wasn't going to work out that way.
Does not take away from the fact that they were the favorite.
They were the favorite going in, absolutely. Florida was the 8th seed, down 3-1. Bob got hot. They got past Boston. People were saying, bring on Florida. They were the favorites. This is the 4th time they are going to be a definitive favorite in a series. And, they're the 1 seed. They're going up against the second wild card team. They're going up against a team where their star players, their best players, don't have a ton of playoff experience. So it's on a platter for you. Like, if you're the Leafs, you got to win this series. Like, there's other coin flips in the past against Tampa. But I'm going to say it now before we even get there.
Dude,
you've got to win the series.
Say. I know what you said, but I've also heard you about a month and a half ago, what you were talking about. I think you described it as your ultimate nightmare fuel. And this is what you said. My ultimate nightmare is they get the first spot and they get Ottawa and they lose the series. That is your ultimate nightmare fuel. You have to admit that. That will haunt you and haunt this show. And the final episode of Overdrive will just be that. What's that stupid song we play whenever the Leafs get beat out?
Hello, Darkness, my old friend.
That's the song
Simon
we're
and
going to play
Garfunkel.
for all 3 hours.
Yeah.
We're not even going to be on the air.
That's the truth, man. It is the one thing Leaf fans have been clutching and been holding on to for the last 20 years is that the Battle of Ontario has broken the way of the Leafs every single time. And that is what will add insult to injury if it doesn't break their way. If they don't win this series, there's going to be a full referendum on the Core 4, on Shanahan, the Shanna plan, all that kind of stuff. But what will add insult to injury is it's not just that the Leafs would have lost again in the playoffs, it's who they would lose to this time. Losing to Ottawa on their first time back in the playoffs, when you won the division and everything's broken your way and you're healthy and ready to go, that's going to be heartbreaking for Leaf fans. If it happens, that one will be very difficult for them to accept. There's no dancing around that.
So Hayes, you were laying out, so you think this is the 4th one, like it was Montreal, Columbus, Florida, and then this one?
Yes.
You believe that they should
so.
win as far as being
I'm saying in terms of being favored.
Sense.
I mean, there's no guarantees.
You can't say you should win. Just being a favorite.
Of course not. I'm not sitting here predicting anything. What I'm telling you is the way the books would indicate it, and I think the way the market would indicate it, is that they're the clear favorites here. Like, and I get their history, and that's where they've got to own that history. But they're the 1 seed playing a wild card team, and they have their best players. The best players in this series are on the Maple Leafs, and they got to win this. That's what I'm saying. That's my point. Is that this is closer to where they were against Montreal 4 years ago, and we know what happened in that series. But you're in Ottawa. You tell us. What is the general attitude around the team and the marketplace in terms of how Ottawa is kind of feeling about this?
I think they should be treating it like they're the underdogs. There's no doubt of that. But I don't look at it. I think they're treating it like it's a 60-40. It's not 90-10.
Yeah.
That's and that would be fair, because if you look at it like, we always talk about the whiteboard and all of that. If you lay things out, clearly, Austin Matthews is the best player, or should be the best player in the series. But then you look at how the goalies match up, how the D match up, how the depth of the organization match up. I think that's where people in Ottawa are going, okay, this might look a little bit different, or might break out a little bit more even than just we'll call it a 90-10 split. So I think you got to play the games. But you're right, like in laying out, I don't think there's anybody in Ottawa waking up today going, hey, we're going to just handle the Maple Leafs because we beat them 3 times in the regular season. I don't think that matters. But I do believe, as much as, and I said this the other day, as much as people in Toronto wanted Ottawa based on their, where they are in the standings and all that, Ottawa wanted Toronto as well because they didn't want the Florida teams.
Yeah,
so I think
sure.
it matches up well for both sides, and I think that's a fair assessment. Is everything you laid out was a fair assessment? Going, yeah, one team is the top of the division, the team first time in, but you got to play the games and see how it unfolds.
They're saying the same thing. The Ottawa Senators are just basically laying out what you just laid out, Hayes. Yes, they have a better record. They're going to have home ice advantage. But let's go through what this group of players in Toronto has done the past 5 or 6 years in the playoffs. And the answer is squat. So why can't we just jump into the party and be a part of the same kind of misery for them? Because everyone else is doing it. Why can't we? They have a difficult time winning in the playoffs. So let's go through some tape. We know what the players are. It's the same cast of characters. And let's find out what they struggle with and why they don't succeed. And we're going to apply the same thing and see if we can do the same thing to them. Yes, Austin Matthews is the best player on the ice. Mitch Marner's probably second. But they got a goaltender who can absolutely go nuts in the playoffs, Mr. Pink Scarf. He can be dangerous. So they're going to just say, let's find out. Let's ask around to our buddies around the league. What did you do against these guys? What's up with these guys? How do they play in the playoffs? It's not hard to figure out what the recipe is.
Man.
So they're going to say the same thing. We want to be the next Columbus. We want to be Florida. We want to be whoever. The Boston Bruins. They've had a difficult time winning. So let's go find out why. And let's, like, if you remember that one game in Toronto, Ottawa played pretty stiff. Like they had a solid kind of manly game where it was like, that's just one game, but that's an example. You could just look at that game and say, that's why we had success in that one. And that's what we got to bring to the table. Plus, because it's the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's you got to get through the next game, the last game, the most meaningless game of the year for so many teams in the league.
Oh, dude, those are dreadful. Man.
Yeah, it's you got to play it, and the Leafs play tomorrow. Ottawa plays tomorrow. You got to get through it, and then you probably got one eye, I'm sure, on Sunday. You probably each team's going to have a day off on Friday. You get to the rink on Saturday. Ottawa will fly in, and then it's going to start feeling very serious and very real. And yeah, listen, I think we all can concede that. We've conceded that for years, that other teams are not going to be fearful of the Maple Leafs until they give you a reason to fear them. They have to do that. They have to go out there, and that means winning 4 games, not just 3. Again, they were up 3-1 on the Habs. They've been up 3-2 in series and haven't been able to close. So I think Ottawa will feel comfortable. I think they should feel comfortable. But it is, I guess, again, the point I was getting to about, when they played Columbus, when they played the Habs, even when they played Florida, here you get a scenario where they don't have the trump card in terms of winning experience in the playoffs, but they do in terms of games played. Where it's like Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares compared to Stützle, Tkachuk, Batherson, Cousins. Those guys have never played a playoff game. Like none of the 4 Sens I just mentioned, they've never played in the playoffs. And Shabbat is another one. Obviously, Sanderson's another one, and these are. It's going to be interesting to see if the Leafs big boys take advantage of that. If they show up and they impose their will, because this should play out. If you want to use another reference from the Leafs past, that first year the Leafs got into the playoffs. Remember they played Washington. And Washington had been to the playoffs every year and kept stubbing their toe. And it was Ovechkin and Williams and Backstrom and Carlson and Holtby. And it was like these guys, they had to win. They had to. The pressure was all on Washington. The Leafs were up 2-1 in that series at one point. And Washington eventually put it together and said, we got to figure this out.
Yeah, but it wasn't with that group. Like, it wasn't with that Justin Williams. Like, it was a different year. Like they ultimately didn't get it done
that year. You're right.
Yeah, that year.
But they beat the Leafs. They beat the Leafs in the playoffs.
Of course, run. Yes. They were, and then they just. I don't know. I just always say, do these guys sit and have beers or go for dinner? And I don't know. I just wonder what they talk about. Like I wonder what they talk about. What's gone on in the past. If it makes them sick.